Hey everyone. So, two quick things. First, my Facebook group page for the Suzanne Venker Show is back up. I'd been using that page for something else, but I have since moved it back to a private page just for listeners of the Suzanne Venker Show. I want a place where you all can talk with each other and where I can chime in periodically with questions and comments myself. So be aware that if you're itching to talk about the things you're hearing on this program, there is now a place to do that. Just go to facebook.com/groups/Suzanne's group. And if for some reason that doesn't work, just try going to Facebook and typing in the Suzanne Venker Show, and hopefully it will come right up. And then click on join. Okay, secondly, when was the last time you took a hot second to write a review of this podcast? I get super sad when I check it periodically and no one's written anything in like a week. I just wanted to tell you how much those reviews mean to me and to the algorithms too. Pretty sure the more reviews there are, the more the show will appear in other people's feeds and whatnot. So if you think you'll forget, like I know I probably would, keep in mind you can pause this program right now and do it, and you won't miss a thing when you come back. We'll still be here in the same spot. That's my favorite thing about podcasts. They're like DVR, which is so awesome. Okay, on with the show. From the magnificent Midwest, it's the Suzanne Venker Show, where men and women are equal in value but wildly different by nature. Join us here every week as we challenge the culture's hugely flawed narratives about men, women, sex, and love. From coast to coast and from around the world, thank you for joining us. Hey, everyone. So a new survey of 2,000 married Americans ages 18 to 55 confirms that a large portion of couples are struggling with smartphone addiction and that their marriages are suffering as a result. Smartphones are linked to strained marriages, fear of divorce, and less sex. Couples who experience phone distractions are about 70% less likely than other couples who don't experience phone distractions, to be very happy with their marriage. The odds of a spouse saying he or she anticipates divorce in the future is 4 times greater when the marriage is troubled by technological addiction. So that's a big deal. That's not a small thing. Obviously, smartphones are here to stay. And presumably, most of us want our marriages to be strong and to last. So how are we going to marry these two things? Before I get to sort of, a hopeful solution to this, or what I see as a solution, the only solution, it's so important to first understand that social media, which is a huge part of what people are doing on their phones when they are on the phone, is engineered for addiction. Like it's really no different from alcohol, smoking, pot, food, any other addiction you can have. It is engineered to get you to be addicted. That endless scrolling is very different from sitting down, for example, and reading a book or reading an article in a magazine or a newspaper that has an end. I mean, eventually you have to get to the end of the newspaper if you're reading it, right? Which is how people have always gotten their news. Social media, not only is it a bad source of news, let's just begin with that, but also your thumb is never going to stop because the scrolling there is no end point. So I don't think anybody could argue that is clearly a problem in the way it's formatted and what the problems and concerns of having that in your life would potentially be. And there's a lot of focus on social media, as there should be, and phone use for young people. It is absolutely 100% correlated to the mental health problems, in part. That is in part why we have the high rates of mental health problems in young people. However, this particular survey focused on married Americans and what's happening in marriages with those smartphones. And I don't think that gets enough attention. It's just almost exclusively on young people. Adults are no less, what's the word? Susceptible, that's the word I want, to addictions than young people, except for perhaps, hopefully, some maturity and experience to sort of stop them and, to sort of stop yourself in your tracks in a way that a young person might not. But the susceptibility is still there. And that's because it's human nature. It's not really an age thing. And the same is true for, FOMO, that fear of missing out. That doesn't end when you become an adult either, sadly. People really struggle with that. So the first thing to understand about social media is that if you know that it's engineered for addiction and one spouse or even both has a tendency toward addictive behaviors, as opposed to being able to moderate and put things down. And by the way, I think it's more normal to have a tendency toward addiction. I think that's probably most people. Very often, though, one spouse will be more susceptible to that than the other. And that is where the marital problems come into play. More than a third of spouses say their husband or their wife is too often on a screen when they would prefer talking or doing something together. It is also clearly correlated with less sex, which makes sense because if you are not connecting, and you wouldn't be connecting because you're on the phone instead of connecting, obviously you're going to have less sex. That might not affect a husband as much, but it's definitely going to affect a wife who needs to connect in order to be sexual or to be interested in, let alone, really into sex. So there is no question that phones are becoming a massive marital problem, as if marriage needs more problems. I mean, it's already challenging enough these days. And if it's that much of a concern, it can lead to divorce. So this is a big deal. That's all I'm trying to say. It's just a big deal. And I think it's going to take more of a concerted social effort for people to help each other along. I'm not talking marriage now. I'm talking just more societally, to help people know that there's life beyond your phone and that you need to partake of that, whether it's, forcing people out into nature. I say people, but I mean, obviously that starts at home with your kids, getting them out into nature and off their phones. But even adults can do something. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. The other day, I ran into someone I haven't seen in a long time who owned a restaurant. And she's about my age, actually maybe 5 years older. And we were talking about the state of the world today, and having our, rant. And she said that they just recently closed the restaurant, but she used to have a sign up at the register that basically said, it said, something to the effect of, don't talk to me if you're on your phone. Like, put your phone down in order to make this exchange, or something to that effect. Which I thought was great because you don't see that very often at all. She also she got so frustrated after so many months or years or whatever of seeing families come in to eat at her restaurant while they're all on their phones. And you have to think of it from her perspective, because when you're a restaurant owner, it's like people are coming into your home, right? And you're putting forth all this effort to feed them. That's kind of how it feels. And if you see everybody on their phones instead of communicating or being together or connecting, that would be really depressing and very difficult to deal with. So I'm very sympathetic toward that. She would actually go up to not just the kids, but the parents and ask them / tell them, I don't know, however she did it, not to be on their phones. I thought that was great. I thought that was taking a stand and making a statement. Hey, this is not good, and I'm not normally somebody who tells other people uninvited, how they should live their lives or how they should parent in personal circumstances. But again, she's the owner of this restaurant, and it was so depressing. She just had to do something about it. So that's an example of, something more societally that people could do if they wanted to. I don't know if there are going to be that many people who will do that. But at any rate, okay, so back to marriage. We probably don't need any more rules for marriage, but I feel like there has to be in order to combat this very serious issue that is not going away. So I'm going to name 4 rules that I believe will go a very long way in nipping this in the bud, that you can put into practice today in your marriage and see the results very quickly. Number 1, for any and all conversations that you have with your spouse, whether they're serious or not, like whether it's what's for dinner or where should we send our kid to school, whatever the situation is, put the phone down. And there's a part 2. Turn it over so you can't see the face of it before you speak to your spouse. Now I'm going to back up here for a moment and tell you everything I'm telling you, my husband and I have put into place in our own marriage. We are no different from you or anybody else. There's nothing special about us. These are all things we also have learned the hard way, but we have found something that works. And I want to pass it on because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that people are not paying enough attention, and there are little things you can do. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's super important in order to connect with your spouse on a daily basis that the other person feels like they have your attention. Now, this can be difficult this was difficult, I should say, even pre-phone era. Even before phones were a thing, it can still be difficult for the spouse to feel like they have your attention. With the phones, I think it's gone out the door completely, and that nobody feels that they have their spouse's attention. And why would they feel that way? You're looking down or your eyes are glancing over towards something while you're in conversation with that person, your spouse. This is a no-no. This is bad news. This is not going to work. This is going to hurt your marriage. The most important thing you can do is have your spouse know that they have your undivided attention. Now, this is people are going to say, that's so much easier said than done. So what? So what? What's the alternative? Your marriage is going to suck. It's going to go down the toilet if you have these daily habits of not giving your spouse your attention. Now, obviously, nothing is ever going to be 100%. If it really is that minor throughout, and you see each other or talk to each other throughout the day a lot, and you happen to glance at your phone while you say, I'll pick you up at 5, that's not the end of the world. So just take it with a grain of salt. I'm just talking about, in general, as a general rule, the phone gets put down. It's very easy to do, and turned over. That part is so important. I can't tell you how many people put the phone down. They think that they're giving the attention to the person, but they can see all those notifications and that pop up on the phone, and just the physicality of its of the visual there of the distraction is there, even if it doesn't have a notification. But definitely, if it rings or has a notification, you're going to not be with that person anymore. So it's very, very important that you turn it over as well. If you get into that habit, I promise you, your relationship is going to feel stronger, and it's not going to be negatively affected by your phone. Because again, going back to what I was saying, the phones aren't going anywhere, and we all want better marriages. So we need better daily habits that become automatic so that over time we are not hurting our marriage. That's it. That's all I'm talking about. So that's rule number 1. for any and all conversations with your spouse, whether they're serious or not. Put the phone down and turn it over so you can't see its face. Number 2, make sure you know each other's passwords. And that if your spouse wanted or needed to, although it may likely never come up, he or she could pick up your phone anytime and see whatever's going on there. If your spouse doesn't know your password and couldn't feel, or I should say, doesn't feel as if he or she could pick it up and not be surprised by anything, that's an indication you've got a problem. Because there shouldn't be anything on that phone that you're doing that is secretive or private from your spouse. If you are scared that your spouse couldn't conceivably look at your phone, that basically means that whatever it is you're doing on your phone should be a point of discussion with your spouse. There's something there that is not getting addressed in your relationship. And you have a sort of a separate private life that you feel is private because he or she doesn't know your password or just wouldn't pick up the phone. And I'm not saying the spouse would pick up the phone. So my husband and I know each other's passwords, but I have no reason to pick up his phone and vice versa. I'm not worried about it. If I were, I would address that because I'd be scared that something's going on that we're not addressing and I'm worried about something. So that's your indication that if you feel like your spouse can't do that, then there is something you are hiding that you need to address in the marriage. So that's number 2. That's the second rule. Make sure you know each other's passwords and that the spouse could pick it up if he needed to, even though he probably doesn't need to. It's just that feeling of knowing that. And that if you don't feel that way, then that's your indication that there's something going on that you need to address. Number 3. This one you'll probably hear more often, more easily in the media and whatnot. Definitely no phones at mealtime. That's just such a given. The dinner hour is already lacking in families today. To the extent that it's there at all, to have that added to it is just forget about it. I mean, like the dinner time is really over then. If you even have dinner just twice a week together, whether your children are grown or still home, there should be a hard and fast rule that there are no phones at the table. Period. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about my friend who owned the restaurant. It's just obvious that at a mealtime, that's like the last place where you should be picking up your phone. Again, take it with a grain of salt. You might pick up your phone somewhere during dinner to, like if you're out or something and you have your phone and you are talking about where you want to go on vacation, you want to look something up. I get that. I've done that, been there, done that, but be careful with that too, because technically it doesn't have to be looked up right then. It's the having the phone accessible at all times that makes it feel as though you have to look something up right then. And you really don't. Now, I need what I use my phone for more than anything else is my notes, because my brain is hopeless if I don't write anything down. So use your notes to instead looking something up on the internet when you're having a meal with someone. Make a note to do it later at the very least if you have to. But another option is to just not bring it. I mean, is there anything that you do where you don't bring a phone? Like I went to mass the other day and I didn't bring the phone because why would I do that? And it's funny because you definitely feel like you're missing something. It feels weird, but it's also very liberating and freeing to not have it. And that's kind of an obvious, church is going to be an obvious place where you wouldn't be on the phone. I mean, I guess I'm sure some people are, but in general, most people probably think, okay, I shouldn't look at it for this hour. So that's a little more, it makes it easy for you to do it. But if you are in an environment, pretty much any other environment, you're going to have to force yourself to remove it. And sometimes just leaving it at home is the best idea. So consider that as well. But anyway, I got off track. No phones at mealtime. The last one, number 4. This is also going to be super hard. No phones at bedtime. Now, this has a little bit of a caveat, okay? We all probably use our phones as, certainly my husband and I do, to be able to see in the middle of the night. For a clock, nobody has, clock radios anymore. We use our phones. So I totally have our phones. We have our phones next to our bed, face down when we go to bed, no question. And it can be, again, tempting because it's there. I mean, some people will go so far as to remove it, like maybe put it in the bathroom to force them not to use it, or maybe to force themselves out of the bed in the morning if they struggle with that. So there are things you could do like that. But if you have it next to your phone, next to your bed, you're going to have a lot of discipline to not pick it up with any regularity, or just have some rules around it. Like maybe you go to bed together and you can do what you need to do for 5 minutes, and then that's it. You turn it down and you're spending the rest of the 30 minutes without it or something. But these rules, whether it's at bedtime or mealtime or conversations, have to be in place. I really feel strongly about this having to be in place with these rules, because it's habits that are going to make or break your success with something. And a phone is now a part of our lives. It's a part of all of our lives. We live with them. So if we're going to invite that into our life and understand the gravity of what it could do on a negative scale, which is how I opened this episode about this new survey, then we have to make the rules and we have to live by them. We have to swear by them, because if we don't, it will get away from us. The next thing you know, our marriage is just in the toilet because we let it happen. So, all of this is to say, phone use can and does clearly limit connection with your spouse. And when that connection is lost, it is very difficult to find your way back. So these rules, think of these rules as a preventative measure from keep that from happening. Because once it has gotten to that point, it is very, very difficult, for some people even impossible, to find their way back. That's why habits and rules are so, so important. So hope that helps you all. Just wanted to share that survey with you, ring that alarm bell, and give some options for people that they can put into action ASAP, so that we don't end up as part of those stats. I don't want to, and I don't think you do. Okay, guys, that's it for today. See you next week. And that ends this hour of the Suzanne Venker Show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to leave us a review, as well as share this episode with a friend. As always, you may reach me with any questions or comments at Suzanne@thesuzannevenkershow.com. And if you would like to support this podcast, which would be very much appreciated, you can do so at patreon.com/The Suzanne Venker Show. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.